My research has common themes, I think, that I can always see my research interests. I've been very interested from my PhD in how flows become unstable. And my PhD work was on stratified shear flow instability, so I was very interested in the dynamical significance of density variations interacting with shear. And that has naturally, at least in my head, led to being interested in processes by which mixing occurs, by which you start off with variation in density, that would be the example, and then the instability will tend to stir things up, and so how does that stirring lead to irreversible mixing? Inevitably brought me to be interested in various aspects of turbulence, because that's, of course, a very efficient way you can do mixing, and that has clear importance in various applications. So I guess the applications also attracted me, understanding and understanding oceanographic flows, talking to oceanographers, also understanding various industrial flows, where you can have density differences, but there's still the mixing, the turbulence, the transition is an important phenomenon. And then a somewhat connected strand, of course, is the mathematical and computational tools that you use to understand such phenomena as how flows become unstable, how they become turbulent, how they cease being turbulent, and how mixing occurs. And so I've also been interested in using different mathematical tools, computational tools, to understand and to quantify those various processes. Because you're often actually interested in some idea of how likely an event is, an optimal perturbation, for example, to trigger a flow. And so I've also been interested in constructing mathematical and computational tools to consider broader generalized stability problems, very often, though, associated with how does a flow at relatively high Reynolds number become unstable and become turbulent and or remain turbulent, and how that interacts with mixing. The reason I like fluid mechanics, I think about this when I try and convince people to be my PhD student. It is beautiful because you can see so many of the phenomena in everyday life, and we are continually interacting with fluids, and fluids are really important on such an enormous range of scales with different dynamics. But then when I say the different dynamics, that then is the other side of the coin for somebody from a scientific or mathematical or engineering bent, that there are beautiful problems in it, that the aesthetic of the problems, the different understanding the physics, the different significance of boundary conditions, the inherent nonlinearity. So often these are just really interesting puzzles to solve that have really pretty mathematics or physical modeling or numerical codes as well. And that aesthetic of the problems are all around and you can see fluids at all times, and also that the underlying mathematics, physics is just so elegant when you do work it out. It's just a really beautiful intersection of them. For me, my favorite JFM paper there's undoubtedly, there is number one. It is a paper by Lou Howard, where the note on a paper by J.W. Miles, where he very elegantly produces a short general proof of the Miles-Howard theorem. The sufficient condition for the flow to be stable to linear perturbations is for the Richardson number to be greater than a quarter everywhere. And so I suppose a necessary condition for an instability is that somewhere within the flow the Richardson number drops below a quarter. Richardson number, of course, being the ratio of the buoyancy frequency squared to the shear squared. It's the gradient Richardson number that matters. And that is just such a masterpiece of explanation, mathematics, that really is significant and is important. And I remember during my thesis reading that paper and just thinking, wow, this is incredible. Because also the papers on which it is a note by John Miles were also incredible papers to actually arrive at establishing this result. But then there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? And the Lou Howard result was just amazed me about how insightful and that's the thing, right? It showed you how the mathematics could tell you something deep about the fluid mechanics and having a physical significance. And I just thought it was so elegant. So that is undoubtedly my favourite JFM paper. I think the advice I'd have for the students starting out on their journey would be curious. I found it so valuable and enriching to read the journal papers, not necessarily not narrowly in particularly what I thought I wanted to, but contiguous areas, because you can have new ideas can come from those contiguous areas. Particularly, in my first JFM paper, I applied some ideas from plasma physics that kind of hadn't been so well connected with the classical fluid community, and so I think that was an experience for me that was good. So I'd say be curious, be resilient. The vast majority of the time things don't work out, and codes have bugs, experiments malfunction, solutions cannot be found of analytic pen and paper exercises, but no day doing research is wasted, because you're always learning, always thinking of different things, and it is through those thinking of different things and trying different approaches you will get somewhere. And so be curious, be resilient, and also I think it sounds trite, but be kind. Because I think that is a broadly defined as always be open to working with other people. This is a collaboration, not a competition. And to understand that doing research is about finding answers and the humanity pushing back the boundaries of knowledge. And I have found it incredibly useful in my career to be open to talking to other people, sharing ideas with other people, trying to learn off other people, and also even in some sense trying to help other people, because then the number of times I have been astounded by what one of my students has said, or what they have the insight they have done is just really enriching to me and more broadly to the whole situation. If you want to do research, I think the fact of wanting to find answers to problems is reflected by the curiosity. The resilience is reflected by interesting problems to solve are typically not easy immediately to do, and so you do need to keep on going and keep on going. But I really do think it's important to be open to working with other people and open to sharing your ideas and to treating other people with respect, and that's what I mean by be kind. Because the review, I kind of joke about this with people, right? When you are a reviewer, you are the most reasonable person in the world, and you're trying to give constructive comments to the author. And when you're an author and you have something that says anything other than this paper is the best paper I've ever seen, you inevitably think, get defensive. But you have to think of the other person on the other side. So as a reviewer, be constructive, even if you think you found a fundamental flaw. And as an author, appreciate that this other person has read your paper carefully and is trying to make it better, trying to make your work better. And so I think those three aspects are really central to the way I have enjoyed my research career. And I really think that they are the best way for people starting out to feel fulfilled through their research career. Well, I definitely have favourite fluid. It's seawater. Yes, definitely seawater. So why do I love seawater? Well, I love looking at the sea. It's amazing how restful I find looking at the sea, because you see the different sea states and you can understand the surface wave properties, and then you see the critically important mass transfer of the white horses, the gas water transfer, but then inside it it's stratified, and it has all these fascinating different dynamics. Perhaps the first time I ever heard of double diffusion, it was just astounded me, that you have, because the salts diffuse much slower than the heat, you have this incredible convective motions going on inside, and also because it's stratified, it has internal waves bouncing around, and then there is this argument, you can have about the Garrett-Mach, the particular spectrum of the waves that are there. There's a particular empirical law that seems to be quite well described. But then those internal waves interact with velocity shear that can lead to these different instabilities and these different mixing processes. And I just find that it's amazing. And it's, 70% of the surface area of the planet. It literally is all around us. I know you need air to breathe and you need liquids to drink, but the seawater is if I'm allowed to be that specific about a particular fluid, because it has these stratifying agents in it, this variation in temperature and the variation in salinity, I just find that's amazing. I think that's the thing.